Hello coders, good afternoon. Let's just bring that into focus a little bit. Hi, how's everybody doing? Today we're not going to be working on howtocodewell.net because I should have released the next version last weekend, but I was busy, so I haven't been able to do that yet. So we're going to do it next weekend. That's version 1.2 of howtocodewell.net. And I don't want to do any more features until that's out. Otherwise, I'll have a backlog of things to test over the weekend. And the last time I did a bunch of testing for version 1.1, that took a long time to do. So we're not going to work on howtocodewell.net today. We're going to work on the course notes for howtocodewell.net. So these are the notes of the courses on the website. So if I go over to the code and let's bring this into play. This is the course notes repository, and also let's put that into play. This is the actual website. Now it doesn't have all of the 16 courses that we have. It's just got these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll focus on these, I believe. However, here I've got the majority of course notes that need to be adjusted, and we have something crazy like 46 of them to go. And I think that not even this covers all of the courses that I have. I guess it doesn't really matter if they're on the website or not, does it? I mean, at the end of the day, they all need to be done. The plan is, the goal is to get all of this done by the end of the year. That is one of the many goals I have. So I guess it doesn't really matter, does it? I mean, it doesn't really matter. What have we got here? We've got switch statements, we've got for loops, we've got while loops, we've got for each loops, we've got conditional statements in general, we've got how to use the PHP internal server. I guess it doesn't matter. And then we've got like Linux stuff, MySQL stuff. Right, I'll tell you what, let's hit the top. Before I do that, let's just check the pull requests. So we've got conditional statements, we've got transcript for tutorial 02. What is that? I believe that was Docker from what I can remember. Let's have a look. Files changed. I think this is, yes, Docker for beginners. I'm going to just change the title of that. Adding transcript for tutorial 2, just because Docker for... Actually, what I could do instead of that, I'll give it a label. Even better. Give it a label. Docker for beginners. There we go. And I will tidy this up as well. I'll give this missing core. It's a transcript, missing transcript, and some document and a documentation. There we go. That should have all gone in. Yes. So what I'm going to plan to do is this weekend I've got a bunch of tickets that I need to go through in Jira land for howtocodewell.net for version 1.2. I'm going to do all those as well as go through these pull requests. And the way this works is that once these pull requests for the course notes go into the main line of the course notes repository, I then tag it and then pull it, include it, I guess, require it, I suppose, in the howtocodewell.net composer JSON file. So there'll be a pull request in there to upgrade the version of the course notes for that. So when I go and do a deployment, when Composer does all of its install-y stuff, it will pull the latest course notes repository, which is what I'm going to be working on here. And then there is a script that gets ran through during the deployment process, that then pulls all of the markdown stuff out of all of this and then saves it to the database for howtocodewell.net. So then when you go and see the courses, you can actually see these course notes as normal on the site. That's the way I've planned it. So yeah, let's have a stab at this one. Let's do that one. Switch statements. Switch statements. Right, so missing course notes, 5 switch statements. And let's have a little look at the code. So I'll just bring that over there. So we've got conditional statements, and we're looking for switch, which we don't have here. So I'm gonna have to have a look at the YouTube playlist. So bear with me whilst I do that. I'll do it off screen because then I can mute the thing. So let's just get to my YouTube channel. Let's go well, and then get to, we're looking for playlists, and I think it is so many playlists. Here we go. Control structures. I don't want to play all of them. This is the gist of it. So we've got number 1, which is if else conditions. Number 2 is for each loops. Number 3 is while loops. Number 4 is for loops. It's number 5 that is the switch statement. So let's bring it over there, and let's have a little look at. So this is number 5. Yes, number 5. But if we go to the code, we can see that number 5 is actually functions. So that actually needs to be 6. So what I'll do is I'll just go to git checkout, and we'll go to, I think it's main. Is it main? Yeah. We'll do a git poll, bring down that. What is Docker for beginners DS store? Ugh. Right, let me just rm DS store, and also rm Docker for beginners dot ds store. I should really put this in a git ignore, to be honest. Right, and then let's do a git checkout. Is this on screen? I had to play with the dimensions. Yes, it is. Git checkout, and we're going to do -b, and this is what's the 128? That's the ticket number 128, and it is switch statements. All right, cool. Right, so in this I need to rename this one. So we need to go to refactor rename. We're going to change that to 06. That's just 0. Pete, you're a fool. Refactor rename. That needs to be 06. And then 6. You can count. And then we need to create a new one. In fact, I'll just copy that. And then this needs to be 05. And it needs to be switch statements. There we go. Okay, so now in this markdown file we need to talk about switch statements in PHP. So let's see my notes. So what I need to do, remove all this and go first up git status. Let's do a, this should only be, yeah, a modified git commit -am hash 128 renaming files. There we go. Right, so here we need to do a little explanation of a switch statement. So essentially a PHP switch statement checks the case, which is a variable, and switches between the case, switches depending switch it I've had a day, bear with me. So essentially a switch statement in PHP is a statement that, well, it's a series of case statements or case bodies, and the code falls into the particular body based on the case that it's switching to. So for instance, you have like a variable, and that gets checked per case, and And if that variable value is of the case, of one of the cases, then that gets used. It's a little bit like an if-else, if-else, else-if, 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 else statement, in the sense that it goes through from the top down and it works out if the value in the condition is matched. And if the condition is matched, then that's used. If, however, none of the conditions are matched, it then falls into the else block, whereas with the switch statement, you can fall into the default block. So yeah, that was my bad explanation of what switch statements are. What I need to do now is actually code it and explain it in English. So what we can say is, well, let's have a little look at the format of this stuff. That's probably not a good example. Let's go to, I think I've got something in the Docker notes. It literally just dives in, doesn't it? There's no like fluff that I have to kind of follow. It's just, these are the notes written in Markdown. So yeah, okay. So I guess what we can do is a switch statement. A switch, because it's not just a statement; it's like the whole shaboogle. Well, you've got the statement, you've got the bodies, you've got the cases. I guess you would kind of call it a statement in its sort of entirety, but let's just call it a switch. A switch. A switch is, I guess you would say, a switch is, I don't want to, a switch contains one or many cases that are checked for against the supplied variable. If the switch contains one or many cases that are checked against the supplied variable, the supplied variable. If the value of the variable, actually, if the condition, here we go, if the condition of the case statement, or if the case condition, that's probably a better way of saying it, if the case condition is met, then the code of the case in the body of the case is then ran. Again, not explaining it very well. I think I'm gonna have to review this. I'll review it once I've written it. I'll kind of write it and then I'll read it again and go. So a switch contains one or many cases that are checked against the supplied variable. Okay, so if the variable, if a case condition is met, then the code in the body of that. I think we'll just leave it like that. Right. So, or I can say a switch consists of, yeah. I can't spell. I can't. I can't spell that. Consists of one or many cases that are checked against the supplied value. supplied variable, supplied value. Let's do that, because it doesn't have to be a single value, a variable. It could just be a value that is evaluated. Okay, so then much like a if-else condition, there can be a switch can include a default case that is used when the supplied value does not match any case. A default body instead of a body, because it's not a case. Much like an if-else condition, a switch can include much like a series of if statements. A switch can include a default that is used when the supplied value does not match any case. Right. Okay. Yes. That's how you spell it. Okay, so let's give you an example. So, for example, what we want to do in PHP land is we want to have a switch statement, and that switch statement will have a value that you pass, and then you can have different cases. So you would have, like, I don't know, you would have well, let's say Apple. Let's actually give it something, and then you would have after this you would do your thing. So let's say echo, and then let's say something like this, or let's call this something like fruit. Apple, and then like this. Fruit is an apple. And then you would have another case where you could have, say, pear. And you could then do an echo. And it is this fruit is a pear. Like that. Obviously without the spelling mistakes. And then I guess you should probably do it in threes, right? So let's say that is a pear, that's an apple. Let's do another one. Let's do an orange. So this one here would be orange. Orange. Oh, come on. Right. This is an orange. Right. And then you would have, like, you could have a default case. So you could say default. Or it's not really a default case, it's just like the default thing it falls into. So this would be like echo the fruit cannot be found. Something like that. Cannot be found. Right. And I guess this would be very similar to like a series of if statements. So you would have like if, and then you would have fruit is equal to apple, and then you would have another like an else statement in here. So else if oops, and you would have like else if, and you would have fruit 1 2 3 is equal to pear, and then you would have orange. So else if fruit like that, and then you would have the final else condition, which is like the default. So let's just print let's just copy all of this stuff into the right places. That's pear, and then this is apple. And what I'll do is I will, there we go, break those out. Let's put some tabs in there, and on the else as well. Right, so essentially it's like that. Now I guess I could put a part in here about, you know, the switch statement is more readable. Oh, I need to put in breaks, don't I? So break on that one, and then a break on that one, because if you don't break, it's gonna just run the others. So there we go. Like there are cases I know I've seen in the old in places where there's like a case that gets evaluated at the afterwards because the case is the same. So if you break this, it's just going to come straight out of the switch statement, right? Right, let's just tidy some of this up. So it is, I forget the PSR, the coding standards, but let's just make all of this a little bit tidier. Okay, that looks good to me. All right. So a switch statement consists of one or more cases that are checked against a supplied value. Much like a series of if statements, a switch can include a default that is used when the supplied value does not match any case. So we can say here, in the example below, let's just give this fruit is equal to pear, right? So in the example below, the printed string would say this fruit is pear. Capital T, as the variable, and let's put it in those. It's just fruit. Has the value of pear. All right. So that, okay. And I'll also say if the value, if the fruit if the supplied fruit does not match any of the cases of the case conditions, then the output would be the fruit cannot be found. All right. Okay. This example can also be written using a series of if else statements, or it should be if else statements. And then I will say that often no, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say normally switch statements are used over big if-else conditions for readability, which, I mean, that's an opinionated statement, but personally I think that's correct. Also, because of no, I will say it. I will, even though it's my opinion. I'll say it. I'll write it. So yeah, switch statements are usually favored over if-else conditions for two reasons. One, they are more readable because it's like you just put in that case statement and then, or that value, and you're evaluating that and you can read it. So if fruit is apple, then it's that. If it's pear, it's that. If it's orange, it's that. Or it's this if none of those cases are case conditions are met. The other reason is that again, this is personal preference, but the other reason why switch statements are used more than the hideous if-else blocks like this is of human error. So for example, here we just have to make the condition once, as in we only have to supply the condition once. Whereas in here, we have to do, in here, we are evaluating it there, we're then evaluating it there, we're then evaluating it there, and then finally here. And this is prone to human error. So for example, what happens if that wasn't correct, right? So there wasn't a triple equals here, it's just a double equals. And maybe this was a different value. Maybe this was looking for something that was truthy, but and I didn't have the triple equals here. But when you just scan this, when you read this, things like this can be quite tricky to read, especially when you've got like hundreds of lines to review in a pull request, which is why having it up here simplifies it. Like putting it in there and then just checking the case. So you're just checking the value of that. Whereas here you're actually evaluating this, is it that? This, is it that? So if you get the evaluation wrong, if you get the condition wrong, then you're screwed. Whereas here you're just checking the output, the value. You're not actually checking how it's being. You're not evaluating the condition, right? You are evaluating the value. If that makes sense. Have I tried the new UI for PHP Storm? No, I haven't. I am a little bit, I've heard all sorts of stories around just other general things with the upgrading stuff. I get a little bit I get a little bit scared with new things straight away. I know a lot of people jump on the new stuff straight away, but I like to give it at least a good few months before I dive in. So that's the same with new operating systems, like upgrades. That's the same with PHP Storm IDE things. Really, for the only reason that if it was to break because I got the latest and greatest and I discovered like a bug that that prevented me from doing my work, then that is a bad thing. I'm not a full-time developer, I'm a contractor. So my technology has to work. It's not a case of saying to someone, oh, such and such, my IDE is broken. It's like, that's like saying, well, your screwdriver's broken. So no, I haven't upgraded. I haven't seen the new stuff. I know it's available. But yeah. And also, things like UI changes, they are quite challenging because you get used to the way you work, right? You get used to where the buttons are. You get used to clicking on certain things and things happening in the way you're used to. There is a lot of muscle memory with that. Even if it's not particularly great UI, you get used to the workarounds. So when things start to change, and if it's a drastic change, that can be quite a headache. So it's one of those things that I will do, but it will happen gradually, and it will happen probably on the downtime, probably over a weekend, probably on a machine that isn't like business critical. So yeah, that's why I'm a little bit cautious. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were saying like they downloaded the latest version of Mac OS, and their machines were just like, not working as well as they used to. And that to me is just a massive red flag. So I rather be way behind the curve than in front of it. Yeah, I mean it's a tough conversation to have with a client when you're saying that the professional tools that you use just don't work, and and I'm sure that IntelliJ, JetBrains, have tried and tested all of this stuff, and I'm sure it works really well. But there's always that fear. There's always that fear that these things won't work as well as they should. Anyway, let's think about this a little bit more. So we need to discuss. We've done the default case, right? We can also group cases together. So we do this like so it's kind of like if it was an apple, or if it was a pear, or if it was an orange, right? So we can, I think grouping is the right terminology. I think it is. So with switch cases can be grouped together. Let's do like, and I'll just give you an example. So we'll take this one, and we'll say something like have I copied the whole thing? No, I haven't, because you're an idiot. Something like, if we pass in something like food, right, and we say that food is going to be like a burger, tell that I'm hungry, and we say that that case and that case and that case, apple, pear, and orange. So we can say this food is a fruit. Whereas this one, which would be the, it won't be the default. We'll create another one. So let's do case, and then let's do unbreak. So let's do burger. So that we can do echo. This food is a meat. And obviously we need to have the case. So we could do case is burger. Let's do beef burger, just for the crazy vegans out there. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, if you were a full-time dev, right? I suppose it's a bit different when you're working from home. I don't know, because like when I started working from home like years ago, I actually started working from home, and they gave me the laptop, which was great. But then I went through a period where I had to use my own laptop for certain contracts, and then as the pandemic sort of calmed down, the contracts that I had after that, they provided me the laptop. I guess it depends, or I guess it's got nothing to do with the pandemic, to be honest. I guess it depends on like the client and how enterprisey they are. Some people like you to have your own tools, and it's something that I've always ensured that I had, just in case the client, because you never really know until you actually start the contract whether you're going to get the hardware for it. Although I have seen more of a trend after the pandemic, because everyone started, putting things on VPNs and having more control over what the staff were using. So I guess with that sense, if it's a laptop that your company is providing you with, or not your company, the company that you're working for, is providing you with, then they are more than likely in charge of the upgrades, because they might have an IT department that deals with all that stuff. And yes, I have actually worked with clients who you're not allowed to upgrade certain things or use certain tools unless they're on their allowed list, right? And then you have to, if you're trying to do anything crazy, like do any kind of remote debugging, then you need to, request through some sort of portal for IT support to open certain ports and certain boxes, which is always a bit of a learning curve for both me and the client. Whereas others, like I said, it's like they assume that you have the kit because you are self-employed, and so I've always made sure that I have the kit, which is at the highest performing kit that I can afford at the time. And when I'm working with clients that provide you with the kit, then the kit that I have at home kind of just is on the shelf, waiting for the next contract that requires it, which is a bit of a shame, because you always have like really high performing things that just don't necessarily use the full potential. But you never really want to be in that position where you get a client and you've run out of hard drive space, or you don't have enough memory because they are doing something crazy with Elasticsearch, and you don't have all of that oomph in your working machine. So I don't know. I guess the last few contracts I've had, they've supplied the stuff, and I don't know whether that's because of the pandemic. Everyone started to work from home. I've been working from home for about 8 years, so it's and I've had both kind of scenarios where you go into, like, I can remember going into a client's office with all of my kit and then coming away from the client's office with all of their kit, you know, as well as mine. And it's like, oh, great, my laptop bag has just got ridiculously heavy. I guess it also depends on what their, you know, their security and all of that stuff is, because a lot of these changes got enforced because of the everyone was working from home. But certainly before COVID, things were a little bit more lax, depending on the client, of course. Anyway, yeah, I get that. I work from home, but the company provides equipment. I also think that maybe that's a good thing for junior devs, because, I mean, these things are really expensive, and if you've just landed your first ever job, you probably don't, and you're young, you probably have a student loan, you probably are always up to the wall with things like rent or a mortgage or what have you. So you don't have quote unquote disposable income to just throw at a laptop. But yeah, I guess if you on the flip side, if you were working full time and you were in the office, then you would be provided with a desktop at the very least. So I guess it's more a question for the contracting space as to whether you have your own tools, or whether the company provides you with the tools. But also, I mean, I don't know where you are, but it also is one of these things with IR35 as to whether you use your own kit or whether your kit, whether the company supplies you with the kit as well. Yes, IR35. How awesome is that? Not. Right. So, switch statements can be switch cases. Or cases can be grouped together. So here's an example. So full stop. In the below example, and this is marked down, so let's give a bit of space. In the example below, the output would be beef burger. Would be this food is a meat. As food has the value of beef burger. Full stop. If what I'm trying to say, if food had the value of apple or pear or orange, then the output would be this food is a fruit. And then you would say, like, I'll give you the equivalent. So the equivalent, I can't spell equivalent. No. The equivalent, does it have any, I can't even be bothered. The equivalent, if statement would look, I can't, man, my spelling is so bad, would look like this. So what have we got? I'll copy this because it's just something to copy. What else is there to say about switch statements? I don't think there's much. So if it was an apple or, so where's my pipes? Or fruit. I mean, really, I wouldn't be writing it like this. If this was real life, I would probably put this in an array and say if in array, but whatever. If it's single quotes. So that's apple. This is pear, and then again an or fruit. Equaled orange. That's the last one. Then we will get rid of all of that, and we will put that in here. Oh, no, that one. This is a fruit. And then we would have the else if, and that would be, and it would be food, not fruit. Of course. Else if food is equal to burger, beef burger. This is making me hungry. Then it would say the food, this food is a meat. And then we would have our else, which is our default case. Now, even though this is smaller in size, as in number of lines, I still hold that this is more readable than that. Also, it's more, what's the word? Maintainable and extensible. Because if there was another food that we needed to evaluate, then we would have another line, another thing here, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. By the time, and I've seen these in legacy code bases where these conditions are just unwieldy. And imagine if there was a bunch of other things here as well. Whereas this, it's more clear. It is like, it's that, or that, or that, which is this. However, if it's that, then it's this. If none of this is correct, then it's that. Whereas this, it's like, if it's this, or it's this, or it's this, then it's this. However, if it's this, it's that. But if none of any of these conditions are true, then it's this. And personally, when I'm reading this, I can read that like just normal English, whereas this, it's like, what do these mean? And again, it's like, is that correct? Or maybe I've spelt this wrong, which, believe you me, happens more than I'd like to care to admit to. How do you spell equivalent? Equivalent. Oh, there's an A on the other side. Okay, fine. Cool. I mean, I think that kind of covers it, really. What else is there for... Yeah, I mean, there's a match statement, obviously, but we need to have an actual match statement sort of... I haven't even done a video on match statements. It's the new stuff in PHP 8. When that happens, we'll have to create another one here. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty cool. Sorry, buddy, I got carried away. That's cool. Yes, luckily you had a pick of the IDE that you were to use, but you had to pay for it. That's a bit harsh. Oh, that's cool. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's That's good. That's cool. Some contracts, they're like, or even full-time positions, doesn't have to be contracts. They will require you to work on a certain IDE. And for someone like myself who doesn't get along with VS Code, that can be quite troublesome, because if you've been PHP Storm all your life and you try and do something new, then it's an upward struggle from the off. I'm sure VS Code is great. I just haven't really given it much attention, to be honest. I'm stuck in my own ways. PHP Storm is perfect for what I do. I'm always scared to update the damn thing. However, saying that, Docker is one of these things that I constantly have to update, because if I don't, it freezes, which is a pain. But that's Docker for you, and I think that's more Docker and Mac. But also, it's not just IDEs, it's also operating systems. So in some cases, there are some jobs that require you to be a Windows developer, even though you're a PHP dev, but a Windows PHP dev, you know. So this is, we only use Windows laptops, and therefore, you know, that just, if you were a Mac user and you don't get along with Windows, you either need to suck it up or find another job. It's as simple as that. And sometimes that's either led through by a business decision. You know, everyone's a Windows guy, so, or girl, and so, you know, it's easier for perhaps IT support to support just a single operating system. Or it could actually be, as sometimes I've seen, it's actually a requirement, a technical requirement by the actual system, as in, these things aren't built for Apple M1. These things are only built for Intel-based. Talking here about Docker images, for instance. So if you try and install the client's code base using a Mac M1, you're going to have a really bad time. Whereas if you were to do it through an Intel-based chip, then like everybody else does, then it's going to be smooth sailing, you know, to a degree. It never really is smooth sailing, to be honest, when you're doing all these upgrades and stuff like that. But it is easier if you're all on the same sort of platform, at least. It doesn't matter, you know, we all try and have these multi-platform platforms, but when it comes to the crunch, it usually is easier that everybody's working on the same thing, and that can be, that can sway you as a contractor as to which way you want to work, because it's like, one of the questions I would ask is, you know, do you allow Macs to be used? And that is a genuine question because of Docker and policy, as you mentioned. Yeah, VS Code is very plugin heavy, and what I have learnt over the years is that the more plugins you have, the more conflicts, the more, and this is just a general thing. I mean, just thinking of all the WordPress sites I've built over the years. So the more things that you add on, the more extensions, the more plugins to anything. It could even be like just Chrome extensions. The slower it is to start up, the more potential bugs you've got, especially when you do an upgrade, because one plugin doesn't match the version of the thing that you're upgrading, you know, the core thing that you're upgrading. So yeah, I try. A lot of people say that VS Code is fantastic because it's, you know, you get a plugin for everything, but that isn't always the best thing. So I know that there's like a VS Code, there's like a bunch of PHP plugins for VS Code, but there's a bunch of inbuilt PHP stuff in PHP Storm, which gets updated when PHP Storm is updated, not when the third-party plugin developers update their stuff. And you know, yeah, it's personal preference, but I would rather have JetBrains work on PHP rather than and the some of the core PHP debugging bits and pieces rather than rely on third-party plugin devs, because it's one of those. It's like, you know, maintainers, you don't know whether these maintainers of these plugins just do it on the weekends whenever they've got a spare 5 minutes, or whether it's something that they do and it's a paid plugin and it's something that they're making a business out of. So yeah. Anyway, I'm going to shoot off. I'm going to grab my dinner. Thank you ever so much for watching, for listening. Next week, I'm hopefully going to be working on some actual PHP stuff to do with the howtocodewell.net site. I just need to spend some time to update the site and do a deployment, go through all the merge requests that I've put through, do a bunch of testing. And I'm hoping to do that over the weekend. So by this time next week, I'm hoping to actually do some more PHP. And we're probably going to be working through infection and the testing framework. And we're probably going to be doing a bunch of composer upgrades and bits and pieces like that. So that's going to happen next Tuesday here. Thank you ever so much for watching. Happy coding, everyone. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Where's the button?